Or to part 3, and finally, this movie starts getting good. We have a plot and some characters to deal with that plot. Frankly, the last half hour of this movie is what the last 75 minutes should have been. We shouldn't have wasted our time with Baby Lickety-Split being stupid and insufferable, or the witches being ineffective villains, or the stupid screen clutter. The vast majority of this movie should have been the adventure to find the Flutter Ponies. Anyway, Will Whistler and company arrived at a field of huge sunflowers. They can easily get lost, so Will Whistler will guide them through from the air. Everything goes fine until the Smooze shows up. They run for it, but Megan trips. She says she'll catch up, but the Smooze cuts a chasm in front of her to trap her. Another chasm opens up in front of Fizzy and Magic Star, so Fizzy teleports over and Magic Star jumps with Danny and Molly. They make it out, but Will Whistler has to go back for Megan. And here is why I said Will Whistler and company. It seems like Will Whistler is the only one in the group who actually does anything. Megan tries to catapult herself across the chasm but barely makes it and is holding on by her fingertips. She falls in, but Will Whistler comes in to save her just in time to avoid the Smooze. Apparently Megan's going to be just as useful as she was back in Rescue of Midnight Castle and without the Rainbow Light. Will Whistler, on the other hand, is going to be a beast when it comes to saving the others. I go so far as to say she carries everyone through this journey.
It's easy to be courageous when helping others.
Good, because you're going to be doing a lot over the next 20 minutes. It seems like everyone's fine at the moment, however a purple ball comes at them. They think it's a Smooze ball, but it's actually the new purple Bush Woolly. Shady also shows up, and guess what? They haven't found Baby Lickety-Split and Spike, and Shady's depressed about it. They decide to abandon that trivial venture and go with the others to Flutter Valley, so with 2 more tag-alongs they head for the Shadow Forest. However, we're first going to waste more time with Baby Lickety-Split and the Grundles. They're trying to find Dream Castle, but instead find Smooze. They run for it, and I have to admit the scene is rather amusing, especially the Grundles' antics. Spike gets a speck of Smooze on his tail, and you can actually see when he gets Smooze if you look closely. However, they get away in one piece otherwise. They end up at a well, and Baby Lickety-Split's acting like she's the one who got Smooze. Well, actually, she's starting to act like someone who understands that there are consequences to one's actions. She realizes all the trouble they've gotten into is because of her acting like a little turd and feels bad about it. She even sings a song that clashes with her earlier song about going alone perfectly. Instead of being loud and obnoxious, it's subdued and humble. There's also this weird echo coming out of the well. Actually, it's not an echo when it says something other than what Baby Lickety-Split just said. Word to the wise, if you're trapped in a well, don't parrot what people at the surface are saying. They send the bucket down to fish out whatever is down there and pull out Morning Glory, a Flutter Pony. 1985-86 was the class of the gimmick when it came to My Little Pony. We were introduced to the So Soft ponies that were covered in flocking, the Twinkle Eye ponies that had fake gems for eyes, the baby ponies with Betty Bye eyes that closed their eyes when laying upside down, and the pretty and pearly baby C ponies that had a shiny finish. These 4 lines would be the stars of the television show, along with the 5th gimmick line, the Flutter Ponies. Flutter Ponies were smaller than other adult ponies, with iridescent insect wings that flutter when you push a button on their back. This design proved horribly fragile and Hasbro had to redesign them halfway through the first year, but that's another story. The movie and show, their wings were magical, go figure, but we'll talk about that magic a bit later when we see it in action. Anyway, this is Morning Glory, voiced by Russi Taylor, who provided the voice for Strawberry Shortcake and I believe is now the voice for Minnie Mouse. Morning Glory is your typical clumsy, naive character. She came to well for a drink but fell in. She agrees to take them back to Flutter Valley and tell the other Flutter Ponies about the Smooze and get help. Oh, I guess that wasn't such a waste of time after all. Meanwhile, our heroines and hero are taking hard way through Shadow Forest. However, this is the most awesome scene in the movie. It's so awesome it was banned in some countries for its awesomeness. Shadow Forest is your typical spooky woods. Danny teases Molly about being scared, however Karma's a bitch as a little while later a branch falls right behind him, scaring the living crap out of him.
Oak, I believe. Nothing to be frightened of.
Now if it was pine, then we'd be in some deep horse apples. Molly makes fun of Danny being scared, however that branch probably would have killed him if it had landed on him. They try to get their bearings when things go from spooky to epic. Okay, who played the Ents Vent Rage card? Personally, I love this scene. This is what the movie should have been. Not this, or this, and definitely not this. This scene is just plain great with its action and ability to surprise you at every turn. The root hand reaching out of nowhere gave me a start when I first saw this movie. The animation was also particularly well executed with attention to the emotions of everyone and how they moved while dodging. The trees themselves were also pretty damn scary in their design. I do have to point out that the trees stop and just sit there and watch while Wind Whistler saves the Bush Willie. She must put out the same force field while saving someone that the Super Sentai teams do when they transform. Fizzy ends up saving them here. She runs interference with the teleportation magic while the others escape. They make it onto a friendlier, read, not attacking forest filled with flowers. They take a break again to check their bearings, and there's also a tall furry plant ahead. However, that's no tall furry plant, it's a house-sized spider. You know what? Sure. They just escaped a bunch of Ents and they're heading to Ponyland's version of elves, so why not throw in the love child of Shelob and a Cyclops? This is Og, the thing Rika and Draggle had to wake up. He's voiced by Peter Cullen, and I doubt I have to tell you who else Cullen's voiced. I have to wonder if they recorded this before or after they recorded the death of Optimus Prime in the Transformers movie, because I can't help but smirk at the thought of him finishing that dramatic death scene and someone saying, "Great job, Peter. Now go over to the My Little Pony recording studio and give us some roars for a giant spider." Faced with a giant spider voiced by Peter Cullen, everyone hides in a nearby cave.
It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Reminds me of your friend Lori. Does not.
Being one half of a sibling rivalry, I gotta admit I did laugh at the interaction between Danny and Molly sometimes. There's no other way into the valley, so they need to get Og out of the way. Danny gets the idea to distract him with fruit snacks, and while this works, the web is too sticky to tear down, and they end up retreating into a ditch again. Molly gets the idea to tickle him because spiders are ticklish. Well, spiders do coil up when you touch them, however that's because they're going, "Oh my god, there's this huge thing trying to crush me!" However, lacking any better ideas, they grab some cattails that are for some reason growing in a rocky ravine even though they live in wetlands and start tickling. It works because, well, the movie needs it too. Peter Cullen sounds so creepy when he laughs. Og laughs so hard the web starts to melt for some reason, and he rolls over it to clear the way. They run for it, but Og recovers in time to give chase. They end up at a cliff, so they have to start climbing, and once again Megan falls. Geez, what did you do to piss off gravity today? However, Wind Whistler distracts Og long enough for her to climb out and they all escape. I love Wind Whistler's expression as they leave. That's a hat trick of saves for her, and if it wasn't for Fizzy's save in the forest, she would have had a natural hat trick. We then randomly cut to them arriving at Flutter Valley. There are Flutter Ponies everywhere, but they all head for cover. Rose Dust comes out and announces herself as Queen of the Flutter Ponies because she has a stupid feather on her head. Megan explains that they have a smooth problem and need the Flutter Ponies' help. However, being the pony version of Tolkien elves, Rose Dust says that they can't as they want to live in peace.
Then you won't help the little ponies?
No.
No! We've braved smooths, pissed off trees, and a giant spider getting here. I dare you to say no again knowing that.
No.
Ugh! It's at this point that Morning Glory and the others arrive. They try to convince Rose Dust to help by shoehorning in the moral of the movie. Everyone should help out everyone else when they need it. Being the moral of the movie, it puts Rose Dust on the defensive. She has to think about it a bit more. Meanwhile, the witches aboarded the SS Cleavage to witness the final destruction of the ponies firsthand, and it certainly looks like the case as Smooth surrounds Paradise Estate. Button's only suggestion is to close their eyes and think happy thoughts. However, the Flutter Ponies arrive with everybody else, and the Flutter Ponies waste no time getting to work with their special magic, the hilariously named Utter Flutter. When they beat their wings real fast, it forms a magical wind not even the Smooths can stand against. As they start mirror-handling the Smooths, Hydia knows they're in trouble. However, the Smooths won't go down without a fight. It has one more weapon up its sleeve. The PDS, Proximity Detonating Smooths. However, not even the PDS stops the Flutter Ponies as they eventually start pushing the Smooths back. It should be noted that there were only 6 Flutter Ponies made this year. However, just 6 of them pushing back the Smooths would have been ridiculous even for this movie. So, to make it look like they had an army of them, they had some with the color schemes of other ponies. They did the same thing with the Sea Ponies in Rescue Midnight Castle. What's funny is that there's one based on Buttons, including her main streak. As the Smooths is pushed back, they uncover Dream Castle and free the Rainbow of Light. They also de-smooth Gusty Sweet Stuff and Bush Willie.
Ponies! Your twinkle is back, sweet stuff.
Insert your stupid jokes here. Now free, the Rainbow of Light grabs the witches and gathers up the Smooths to drop them back in the volcano. Even though it does this by taking the witches on the worst tilt-a-world ride ever, they don't seem any the worse for it. They still have the wherewithal to beg for their pathetic lives.
Put us down, Rainbow, please! Put us down! Don't put us down! Don't do that! No!
Have a nice swim, bitches! Rose does de-smooth Spike's tail, though I don't know why Morning Glory didn't do it when she first met them, and she and Fiolas try to de-smooth the Grundles. However, the Grundles were never smooth. They just look like that naturally. But the smooth is officially gone, so everybody's happy. Unfortunately, we get hit with one more blow of stupid commercialism as 30 ponies who everyone and their mother wants dead or enslaved decide to hand over their big, well-fortified castle to 5 Grundles. Why? Because we got the Paradise Estate to sell. Then gives the ponies back the Rainbow Light like it should have been all along when Whistler North Star take her, Danny, and Molly home to finish the movie. Now that we've gone through the movie, what can I say to sum it up? Well, I believe I have to mention that I've been astounded by some of the reviews I've read about this movie. Strawman has a point doesn't begin to describe the anti-fandom oozing from these reviews. You'd think you'd catch leprosy from watching this movie the way these people describe it. Now, I know I said everyone is entitled to their opinion, but these reviews would be like someone complaining about the Lord of the Rings movies because the main characters were hobbits. Also, the fact that these people would then go into their boards and bask in the praise from their fans for surviving this movie sickens me. That suggests that they weren't reviewing the movie, but rather bashing it. They start out with the full intention of hating on this movie solely because it exists and not on its merits. As a reviewer, I personally find it to be an insult to the craft because it does a disservice both to the material and the audience. There's no argument that this movie had its fair share of problems. However, when compared to the company it keeps as an 80s movie based on a toy, it was actually one of the better ones. I know I said it failed to live up to the standards of the specials, but that's because the specials were just so good and the people involved could have done better. Still, if you go into it thinking it'll be what the assholes say it is, I think you'd be pleasantly surprised. There's just something about this movie I can only call endearing. I know I spent all this time complaining, but I can't outright hate this movie and the characters in it despite all its flaws. Even Baby Lickety-Split ended up redeeming herself somewhat. It had little peaks at the much better movie it could have been, and it also evaded many of the problems other movies like it had. It had few plot holes and actually a rather cohesive story. It was just an uninteresting story. I think that makes it easier to slip on the nostalgia glasses, push aside the problems, and just watch the movie. Though I have to say, it is a much better small screen experience than big screen experience. I think Hasbro should have just put it on VHS, because the ability to fast forward through the more dragging parts and watch in pieces is a big plus. Fortunately for My Little Pony and friends, it came out quickly enough that Hasbro couldn't think about it after the abysmal reception the movie got. The series would be more successful, though that's not exactly a big accomplishment. I don't intend to do any reviews of the series at this time, however I do have some suggestions if you want to check out the series for yourself. Good episodes to see would be The Return of Tambalon, The Magic Coins, Crunch the Rock Dog, The Quest of the Princess Ponies, and The Golden Horseshoes. The Return of Tambalon, The Magic Coins, and The Quest of the Princess Ponies were all written by Michael Reeves. Yes, the same Michael Reeves who wrote for Dungeons & Dragons and The Real Ghostbusters, and would later write for Batman the Animated Series and Gargoyles. He brought back the dark but fun tone of Rescue of Midnight Castle, but not quite as visceral, and he tried to flesh out the Ponies' characters a bit more, though none of the other episode writers followed his lead, so it didn't have much impact on the series. In fact, I have to say I personally blame Michael Reeves for my pony fandom, as his episodes are what really got me into the series. As for what to avoid, the only truly horrible story is The Glass Princess. Seriously, don't touch that one with a 10-foot pole. Overall, the series was not bad, especially considering what people say about it. It was action-packed as Transformers or G.I. Joe, but it had some fun adventures and antics. The series would also not have a constant villain, but instead different villains every time, and thank God for that. That means we never have to see those stupid witches ever.
Help! It's the witches from the volcano of Bloom!
God damn mother.
Something bad is coming down. Have you heard the news?
Listen up.
It's running high. Nothing can stop the smooth.
You can't stop me.
See the way it slithers forth, spewing down the roof.
I love booze.
Here it comes right now. Nothing